No, sir.
It's personal?
That is not my testimony.
Is the problem with the injunction? You were criticizing the universal injunction
issued by a judge in a single judge division. I've been very clear today that those are a problem.
By a Republican judge in a Republican division, then it's bad.
No, Senator.
Otherwise, it's fine.
No, Senator. I think that single judge divisions
What is the
are a problem.
principal difference? I'm looking for a principle. I understand you hate the president. I understand you love all of these rulings against him. You and I both know that's not a principle. You're a lawyer. What's the principle that divides when issuing a nationwide injunction is okay when it's not? When the Biden administration was subject to nationwide injunctions, you said that they were travesties for the principle of democracy. You didn't say the referral to Judge Kaczmarek was a travesty. You said his injunction was a travesty for principles of democracy. Yeah. So, in other words, the translation is just you didn't like the outcome. Is that right?
No, Senator. Look, we're talking about, I don't think Article 3 precludes this form of relief. So we are talking about prudential considerations.
Prudential meaning political?
No.
Then give me, so far I have yet to hear it. You've been questioned by multiple senators. I have yet to hear a principle other than the fact when you like the ruling, you think it's great to apply it nationally, including non-parties. When you don't like the ruling, it is a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law.
Welcome back to Right View Nation, where we speak truth with no filters, no apologies, and no patience for hypocrisy. If you're tired of watching the Constitution get used like a dirty rag by activist judges and left-wing academics, then buckle up, because today, we're diving into a Senate exchange that exposes the left's legal double standard like never before. Senator Josh Hawley just delivered a verbal knockout to Professor Shaw, a so-called legal scholar who got caught red-handed twisting the Constitution depending on who's sitting in the White House. And folks, this wasn't just a debate. This was a public indictment of the left's weaponization of the judiciary. Let me walk you through it. So here's the situation. The Senate is holding a hearing not on whether rulings against Trump were fair, but on whether nationwide injunctions, legal decisions made by a single district judge, should be allowed to bind every American, including people not even involved in the case. That's the issue. But guess what? When these rulings go against Trump, the radical left celebrates it as justice. But when the shoe's on the other foot, when Biden's executive orders get blocked, suddenly it's a travesty against democracy. Oh, how convenient. Senator Hawley pointed out that Professor Shaw once called a nationwide injunction under Biden a travesty for democracy and the rule of law. And now Shaw's out here defending those same sweeping rulings when they're used against Trump. Folks, this is what we call hypocrisy weaponized. They pretend it's about principles, but let's be real. It's about power. When Democrats lose in court, they cry judicial abuse. When they win, they call it accountability. It's not about justice. It's about control. And Hawley wasn't letting him squirm away. He demanded a principled legal basis for when these injunctions are acceptable. You know what the professor offered? Nothing. Zilch. Just vague rambling about Marbury versus Madison and changing times. Not a single shred of constitutional justification. Just feelings. And guess what? Feelings don't belong in a court of law. If your principles depend on whether the president has a D or an R next to his name, then you don't have principles at all. Let me be clear, America. The real danger here isn't just these activist professors and judges. It's the systemic rot that allows unelected, unaccountable district judges to impose nationwide rulings based on political ideology.
Thank you. Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, it's great to have this hearing. Thanks for calling it. Thanks to all of our witnesses for being here. Professor Shaw, nice to see you again. Let me just start with you, if I could, Professor Shaw. You talked about the fact that there have been lots of rulings against the Trump administration. That's absolutely statistically true. I disagree with almost all of them. In fact, I think all of them. But the issue of this hearing really isn't the rulings, is it? It's the remedies. Would you agree? And those are distinct things. You may think that the ruling is quite correct, but that's actually not what we're talking about here today. We could have a hearing on that. Maybe we should. But we're talking today about the remedy. And the question is a remedy that binds parties who are not before the court, is that an appropriate thing? I mean, aren't you concerned about judges binding non-parties in their remedies? You may love the ruling, but even if you do, don't you think it's a little bit anomalous for courts to be going out there and binding parties who are not before them? I mean, is that something we want to encourage?
Senator, I think that judges have been issuing rulings that impact non-parties since Marbury versus Madison, right?
So you're not concerned about it?
I absolutely think that they can be abused, and
Well,
they
no,
have
wait a
been
minute,
abused.
wait a minute. You were very concerned about it just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You said in response to a nationwide injunction on the Biden FDA's mifepristone rules, and I quote, "This injunction's a travesty for principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law."
I think I've been consistent today. That was issued by Judge Kaczmarek in a single judge
Wait a
division.
minute,
They're a
wait minute,
problem.
wait a minute. So you
Those
have
are
an
a
issue with
problem.
him personally? Wait,
No, no,
so
no.
your testimony is if it's issued by Judge Kaczmarek, it's bad?
No, sir.
It's personal?
That is not my testimony. I
So
have said
is the problem with the injunction? You were criticizing the universal injunction here.
issued
Is
by
that-
a judge in a single judge division. I've been very clear today
so
that those
if
are a
it's issued
problem.
by a Republican judge in a Republican division, then it's bad.
No, Senator.
Otherwise, it's fine.
No, Senator. I think that single judge
What is
divisions
the
are a problem.
principal difference? I'm looking for a principle. I understand you hate the president. I understand you love all of these rulings against him. You and I both know that's not a principle. You're a lawyer. What's the principle that divides when issuing a nationwide injunction is okay when it's not? When the Biden administration was subject to nationwide injunctions, you said that they were travesties for the principle of democracy. You didn't say the referral to Judge Kaczmarek was a travesty. You said his injunction was a travesty for principles of democracy.
Yeah. So,
in other words, the translation is just you didn't like the outcome. Is that right?
No, Senator. Look, we're talking about, I don't think Article 3 precludes this form of relief. So we are talking about prudential consideration.
Prudential meaning political?
No,
Then
no.
give me, so far I have yet to hear it. You've been questioned by multiple senators. I have yet to hear a principle other than the fact when you like the ruling, you think it's great to apply it nationally, including non-parties. When you don't like the ruling, it is a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law.
Look, Senator, I'll say I think I am self-aware enough to know that my view of the underlying legal question, I am sure colors my perception of the remedy. I think that we should all acknowledge that. And yet I do think
And
that
why
there,
shouldn't we stop nationwide injunctions for everybody?
I think there
That's
is,
what we're talking about today.
because I'm not willing to leave without relief non-parties who
No,
are
you're
injured.
not willing to leave without the ability to bind President Trump.
No, I
Right?
think that.
I mean, and when it's
believe-
Biden, it's okay.
No.
When it's Biden, oh, it's a travesty. When it's Trump in office, it's no holds barred, whatever it takes, right?
I
It's just
believe in
like
a
that
powerful
book that,
no.
what was it that President Biden's staff said? We've got to do undemocratic, unconstitutional things to save democracy. Why isn't this the same
I believe
thing?
in a powerful president. I do believe in presidential power, but power and constraint are not at fundamental odds.
What
Constraint
is the
legitimates
principle?
power.
What is the principle? The legal principle. You've referenced prudence. You've referenced the judges you don't like. What's the principle of when an injunction binding non-parties, which was never done in this country before the 1960s? And let's see the chart, the Trump chart, which was done really only once Trump came into office for the first time. You don't think this is a little bit anomalous? You don't think that's a little bit
A
strange?
very
You think this is
plausible
good for the rule of
explanation,
law?
Senator, you have to consider is that he is engaged in much more lawless activity than other presidents, right?
You don't think
you must
this
concede that
was
as a
never
possibility.
used before the 1960s, and suddenly Democrat judges decide we love the nationwide injunction, and then when Biden comes to office, no, actually.
It's Republican appointees as well, Senator.
don't like
And the 1960s is where some scholars begin, sort of locate the beginning
Can
of
you
this, but
identify one
others.
before then?
Mila Sahoni, who's another scholar of universal injunction, suggests 1913 is actually the first. There were others in the
so we
20s.
endured, the Republic endured for 150 years before there was a nationwide injunction.
Well, the federal government was doing a lot less until 100 years ago. So there's many things that have changed in the last 100 or the last 50 years.
So
This
so
is,
long as it is a Democrat president in office, then we should have no nationwide injunctions. If it's a Republican president, then this is absolutely fine, warranted, and called for.
That is
How
not-
can our system of law survive on those principles, Professor?
I think a system in which there are
Is
no
that
meaningful
blind?
constraints on the president is a very dangerous system
That's
of law.
not what
and I
you
am-
thought when Joe Biden. That is not what you thought when
I
Joe
think
Biden was
every
president.
president
You
is
said that is
constrained
not what
and
you
must be.
said. You said it was
Absolutely.
a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law. You also said
Supreme
when Joe
Court senator
Biden
agreed-
was president. Wait a minute,
agreed
wait a
9-0
minute.
with me on
you
that
also
case,
said
to
when
be
Joe
clear.
Biden was president, you said the idea that anyone would foreign shop to get a judge who would issue a nationwide injunction was just politicians, just judges looking like politicians in robes. Again, it threatened the underlying legal system. People just trying to get the result they wanted. It was a travesty for the rule of law. But you're fine with all of that if it's getting the result that you want.
Sir, the Supreme Court agreed unanimously with me in that case, right? There was no standing. The case should never have been allowed to proceed.
Wait,
and the combination of parties without standing and the single judge division.
No. We're talking. No, they did not. They did not issue a ruling on the nationwide injunction. You criticized the injunction nationwide. Listen,
issued in a case where no one had standing.
On this. Here's the thing. We've now gone 6 minutes, and Senator Kennedy had you for 6 or 7. You couldn't identify a single principled basis. We all know the truth here, which is it's not just you. It's most of my colleagues over here on this side of the aisle, who I respect a great deal, and they were raising very principled objections to the nationwide injunction just 6 months ago, maybe 9 now. And you're probably right. My point is that all that's changed in 9 months is the occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And I realize that my colleagues on this side of the aisle very much dislike that individual, and I realize that you think that the rulings that he has lost are fundamentally sound. We might grant all of that. I disagree with all of that, but we can put that to one side. The question we're talking about here is, should judges, single judges, district court judges, be able to bind non-parties who are not in front of them? And you used to say no, now you say yes. Let's be consistent. I would just suggest to you our system of government cannot survive if it's going to be politics all the way down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I briefly respond?
Sure.
I mean, you invoked democracy a couple of times there, Senator. Judges are part of our system of democracy. Democracy is not as simple as majority rule. Judges have always served something of a
You would have it be as simple as
function.
majority rule. When you get the majority you like, you're for the nationwide injunction. When you don't, you're not.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to give you the opportunity that I often found absolutely precious when I was arguing before a panel of judges and couldn't get my answer.
That's not democracy. That's not separation of powers. That's judicial tyranny. The framers of our Constitution never envisioned a single judge in one state binding 330 million Americans. That's why for over 150 years, this kind of remedy didn't exist. And now suddenly, after 2016, it's become the go-to tool of the anti-Trump resistance. Coincidence? I think not. Let's not kid ourselves. The left is playing a long game. They're not just trying to win elections, they're trying to rewrite the rules of governance. Weaponized injunctions, forum shopping, judge shopping. It's all part of a coordinated strategy to sideline any president who dares to challenge their narrative. When Trump enforces immigration laws, blocked. When Trump protects religious liberty, blocked. When Trump defends American energy independence, blocked. All with the stroke of a pen from a judge who was never elected by the people. And yet, when Biden's unconstitutional mandates are challenged, suddenly, it's outrageous to block them. Suddenly, courts should defer to the executive branch. Hypocrisy doesn't even begin to cover it. Patriots, we've got to wake up. We've got to stop pretending that this is just business as usual. The left doesn't want a level playing field. They want to rig the legal system to suppress conservative leadership at every turn. So what can we do? First, support senators like Josh Hawley, who aren't afraid to ask the tough questions. Second, demand judicial reform. No more nationwide injunctions from single district judges. Period. Third, stay informed. Don't let the media gaslight you into thinking this is all about the law. It's about raw political power, and they want it all. Here on Right View Nation, we stand for a constitution that applies to everyone, not just the woke elite. We believe in judges who interpret the law, not invent it. And we'll keep shining a light on this broken system until we the people take back control. If you're fed up with 2 sets of rules, one for the left and one for the rest of us, then hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more unfiltered truth. Because we don't bow to the mob. We fight back with facts, faith, and fire. This is Right View Nation, and we're just getting started.